We can use media queries to display our content differently depending upon whether maybe the user is on a lower resolution or they're on a phone. So it's really powerful and you can take advantage of it in all modern browsers. Let's open up Google Chrome, and here's sort of what we had from the last lesson. We have multiple columns, a logo, and a heading. So now I want to take advantage of media queries to change the content when we adjust the width of the window, as you can see right here. So let's do that right now. I'm going to go back into Sublime Text, and here's all we have. We have multiple columns for our paragraph. The first step is I'm going to go to the body element and set a width, and we want to make this flexible. So I'm going to set a width of a percentage of 80%. Next, if we come back to index.html, you can see that I'm wrapping all of our content within a section. Now I'm going to say get all sections, and remember I'm being very generalized here for our demo, but you'll want to be more specific. And I'm going to set a width of 70%. And now that is not 70% of the browser window, it's 70% of its parent. So it would actually be 70% of 80%, if that makes sense. Next, I'm going to set margin to auto. Let's see what we have now. There we are. And next, let's refer back to one of the earlier lessons where we learned about box shadows, so you don't forget any of that. Maybe to the section element, I'll provide a box shadow, and we'll make the X offset 0, the Y is 0, 5 pixels worth of blur, and then we'll set it to a black color. So I'll set 0 red, 0 green, 0 blue, and I'll set the alpha level to about 30%. Now if I reload, we have a box shadow all around. But again, I do want to bring in the vendor prefixes. So I'm going to run that through Prefixer, and now we have WebKit, Mozilla, and the official form. Good, but now it's right up against the edge, so let's give it a little bit of padding. So I'll do it right here on the section. Padding, and we'll set that to 30 pixels. Reload. All right, that's looking better. Next, I want this image to take up its entire width. So we'll say section, img, width is 100% of its container. There we go. And lastly, I want to center this section on the page. So we'll go to the body element and set margin to auto. But also let's push it down from the top a little bit. So I'll set 100 pixels on the top, or maybe a little bit less, 50. All right, there we are. So now we have a flexible layout. If I were to reduce this, you see it comes down. Nothing special here. This is the advantage to using percentages, because now we're saying the width of this section will be based upon the width of the body element, and the body element is based upon the width of the window. It's 80%. And I reduce it. Very cool. But now if I get too small, these columns might be too thin. There might be a point when I want to adjust to just a single column. That makes sense, right? All right, well, we can use media queries to do that. We have a couple of ways to implement media queries. I'll show you a couple of them today. The first one is we're going to specify @media. And next we can specify the format. Will it be for screen? Will it be for print, or will it be for all? Now, screen will be set by default, so we could even remove that entirely. But for now, let's add it on screen, and we're going to set our parameters for when this will take effect. And I want it to take effect when maybe the maximum width is, say, 800 pixels. And this means when the width of the browser window is 800 pixels, then we're going to execute the code within. So here at this point, I'm going to target those paragraphs, and rather than setting the column count to 2, we're going to set it to 1. So we'll say WebKit columns 1. And then once again, let's make sure we do Mozilla and the official form. So let's stretch this out again, refresh, and now watch what happens as I slowly reduce it. It will get to the point, there we are, where it turns to 1. Very neat. So let's change it up and add some more. By default, why don't we set the number of columns to 4? So when it's full size, we're going to have 4 columns. And then as we reduce it, we're going to adjust it ever so slightly. So once it is at 800, let's change it from 1, and we'll bring that down to 2 columns. And then I'm going to duplicate this, and we're going to set another media query. You can have multiple ones. And this time, if the maximum width is 500, maybe something like a phone, we'll set this down to 1 for the example. All right, let's bring it all the way to full size. We have our 4 columns. And now, once we get to around 800, it's going to switch to 2. And then when we bring it down again, it switches to 1. And this is how media queries work. So you have a couple options here. If you do not want this within your style sheet, you can reference a different style sheet. So I could go right here and also link to, say, small.css. But I only want you to link to it with the condition that the media equals screen and the maximum width is, say, 500 pixels. There we are. And this is going to be the exact same effect, but then you could place any of your special media queries. In this case, this code right here would go into a file called small.css. I'm going to comment that out because if we place this all within the same file, we can save on HTTP requests. So it really just depends on your specific needs. Now, it's important to remember you can change anything. So let's say you had a sidebar to the left. You could have that for full screen, but then as you reduce it, you could push the sidebar down to the bottom using media queries. So really the sky's the limit, and you can be really creative when working with these. And of course, the biggest advantage is when you design with this style, whether the user is on a phone or a desktop computer or an iPad, they're going to be getting an optimized experience. So it's definitely a best practice.